being part of it, if that can, the benchmarking part can also be made part of the response to be given by the presenter. And the other question, Chair, it's rather point of clarity. It's with regard to the implementation process of the proposed methodology, because ESCOM has indicated in the submission that we got that they would like to have the changes, if approved by the regulator, in this financial year 2025-26. And my question is ESCOM considering that this be done retrospectively or not, considering where we are with the financial year of 2025-26? And also, Chairperson, has ESCOM also considered the phasing out of what they're proposing, should the regulator approve the proposal that they have brought before it? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much to the members. I do have a couple of questions which have not been addressed in this presentation, and I also did not see some of these points in the study itself that ESCOM has undertaken. And some of these things have also been raised by the stakeholders that submitted comments. As you know, that South Africa is moving towards a liberalized market where NERSA is required to introduce competition and make sure that the sector itself is competitive and there is fair level play field. So one of the key things, as well as the market or as the industry is moving to a competitive market, the issue of the losses, the importance is supposed to be on the accurate loss allocation, so that you can also just ensure economic efficiency as well as the avoidance of cross subsidies between the different sort of networks, and how you manage this. I would like to find out then from ESCOM as to how did you take into consideration the fact that the market is moving towards a competitive markets to start off with, and secondly, the impact that this would have. Can you, Mr. Mabunda, can you please assist there? The impact this will have on the other market participants in the platform, those that need to compete and perhaps even participate in SAWEM. That's the second thing, especially the generators that will have a certain threshold of capacity that will allow them to compete at the SAWEM, and then they have to also just be required to pay additional cost. And then thirdly, and which is one of the issues that were raised by stakeholders, is the accurate identification of the cost, how the cost have been determined, how much, and also the accurate allocation of such cost. So that's the first issue. The second issue that I would like to understand from ESCOM, I hear that you are saying you are going to do away with the rebate, especially for those that are sort of impacting the system, and then you will still have the rebates for others. I would like to understand why that approach, instead of also ensuring that you introduce incentive mechanisms that would also require those that are impacting negatively on the system to try and optimize the usage of the system. Why do you decide on doing away with the rebate instead of doing something that is much more important, which is to optimize the utilization of the network, and so that the network can be better managed, as opposed to removing the rebates, but introduce an incentive scheme. Even the regulator itself, as it is done in other countries, actually. Not that it is something that must just be done by the distribution system operator, but also the regulator itself. It can also introduce incentive systems. But I would like to understand from Eskom's side what incentives you can introduce before the regulator can also take up its role and introduce incentive systems to encourage that loss reduction, as opposed to leave everything in the hands of Eskom to just do away with the rebates, instead of introducing something that would try and ensure a better optimization of the system use. As you know, in our Act, we can also be able to set a performance-based incentives, for instance, for network operators, and also the infrastructure upgrades if we want to do so. And there's a lot of things that can be done, to reduce the technical as well as non-technical losses, which can impact positively by the embedded generators. So that also, because we're looking at the interest of not just Eskom, what happens to Eskom, but we're also looking at ensuring that the market is open for others, and that also embedded generators can thrive in the market. And by so doing, the regulator cannot leave it in the hands of Eskom, but also look just at other incentives that are intended to improve performance and making sure that the technical losses as well as non-technical losses can be reduced. So that's one of the options that the regulator can look at, and I would like to find out what is the thinking of Eskom in terms of introducing other incentive mechanisms. And then the other thing that I just wanted to find out in terms of Eskom is I just want to check from my notes. Yes, I think it's the question of how Eskom encourages these generators to optimize their placement on the system and operation to minimize system impact. I just wanted to find out, instead of just taking this approach, what is it that you are doing to make sure that that you are encouraging them to reduce their impact on the system. May I then also find out, because it's important for the regulator, especially when there are piecemeal requests that are coming through the regulator, of which request at the end of the day, in terms of these various costs that are being picked up, cumulatively, those costs will have an impact on the price of electricity, of which price at the end of the day will have to be paid by customers or by consumers. Now, I would like to understand, where is Eskom going with this? Is it the intention of Eskom to, if it were to be approved, the application in its current form, if it were to be approved, is it Eskom's intention to then apply for a tariff so that these costs then are reflected properly on the tariffs, and then we can see who is going to then pay how much, as opposed to have these pockets of increases that are affecting different customers and may also pose challenges in terms of the regulator being effective enough to see what are some of the marginal squeeze elements and some exclusionary effects that are caused by enormous costs facing other generators in the market, and those generators competitive opportunities will then be crippled by the high cost. So that also becomes important as a consideration from our side. So can I understand where is Eskom going with this? Is it something that if it were to be approved, that you will simply allocate those costs to the generators, or there will be another process that will ensure transparency and we understand how it will impact on the overall tariff that will have to be paid, or cost that to be paid by the generators and the consumers that are buying from the generators. And then the issue of the non-local authority. Does it mean that for those municipalities that that are in a position to have some of the generators or to generate their own, does it mean that they would not be affected by the cost that you intend to introduce? If you can just clarify that, I would appreciate it. Let me stop here. Maybe we'll have another round of questions. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Mashego. Mr. Mashego?
All right. Thank you very much, Chairperson. All right. I will, sorry, just to clear my throat. I will address the questions in the order in which they were asked. All right. So the first question, just to start off with, is in terms of the map that is being shown currently. And I think the specific question that was asked, they used an example for Johannesburg, that why is it being treated as an independent, isolated case? Chair, just to answer that question is, we are required to, in terms of charging for our losses, right, to differentiate, firstly, differentiate by voltage. So there needs to be some level of voltage differentiation. And the tariff code itself allows that we can also differentiate geographically. Now, we have noticed, Chair, that generators connected at different parts of the network have a different impact on the network. So hence why we are embarking on this route, to recognize that not all generators have the same impact on that network, and the tariff code requires us to treat as such. So those that are increasing to charge a losses charge, and those that are contributing to a decrease in losses to be rebated as such, right? So and hence why we took this approach to say we will have a map of the landscape of the country, and then determine where these various generators are located. And in our study and our simulation, right, to use their generation patterns and run our technical analysis to determine what the impact of those generators is on the network. And these are the results of the study that we received. Right. So yeah, that was the first question. Now, the next question was, could there be other factors that could be affecting this change in losses? Chairperson, we did highlight the 4 key factors that we have noticed as Eskom that are contributing to this change in, on the network that we're seeing with regards to an increase in losses in certain areas. So those 4 key points is the basis for, it's the rationale behind why we have made our submission, right? So generators, how they impact the network right? It's more about how much they generate, where they generate in terms of location, and the fact that they are now embedded into the system and they are utilizing portions of the network and parts of the network that were not originally designed for for such use, where we have high levels of energy injection at those voltage levels, right? So these four key points, Chair, is really the foundation and basis of our submission, and this is what we have picked up in our analysis. Now, with regards to the study, the question was asked, what is our view as Eskom with regards to peer reviewing of our study and our analysis, right? And to submit, Chair, is that Eskom has no objections with having our study being peer reviewed and being verified externally. The next question, Chair, is that the overall impact of our analysis that we have conducted, right? I think the question was asked, would we need a change in in the current regulatory framework? Does that need to be reviewed? Chair, and I think that was addressed specifically to the wheeling rules. Chair, the wheeling rules were released, the updated wheeling rules were released recently, and the various stakeholders did provide, including Eskom, did provide our inputs to those rules as was requested. And our submission is based and is being supported by the wheeling rules that are, that are recently been reviewed and updated, as well as the tariff code itself, right? And that is, we are ensuring that in our submission, we are aligning to those requirements contained in those two pieces of regulation. The next question asked, Chair, is with regards to a more, balanced tackling of this matter, and is our proposal benchmarked on on other, I'm assuming that the benchmarking would be on other studies or on maybe what's happening on other networks. I wasn't clear on that question, Chair. But as what we can submit, Chair, is that this change and increase in losses has also been seen on the Eskom transmission network as well, Chair. So in our RTP, in our retail tariff plan submission, the loss factors for applicable to generators connected on the transmission network were also updated to also reflect the impact of those generators on our network. Now, our study as well that we have conducted aligns with that update, that was submitted for transmission connected generators, and those loss factors were approved as such by the regulator. So our current study, which is now specific now to distribution connected generators, aligns with what we are seeing as well on the transmission network, right? Now, in terms of the implementation process of our submission, Chair, we did mention in our submission that we were seeking for this amendment to be implemented within the current financial year, but we submit that the regulator will make the determination on that, on the implementation therefore of our submission. phasing out process, I think we were asked with regards to, are we looking into a phasing out process and how that will be dealt with? Once again, Chair, I think in terms of how we, implement or phase out this process, it will be at the regulator's prerogative how the implementation of our submission will be tackled. Chair, the next question was regarding incentives. Why is Eskom only focusing on this losses charge, or whether we charge or we rebate? And why not consider other incentives? As submitted in our submission and this presentation, Chairperson, is that the incentive in essence is currently there. So the tariff code requires us to provide a signal to the generators that either increase or reduce losses. And those generators that reduce losses are being paid. They are still receiving their rebate, right? So it's an incentive on those generators in those connected in those specific geographic locations. And those that are contributing to increases then will, pay as such. They will pay a losses charge, right? But Chair, we will further supplement our response with regards to the incentive to the regulator in writing. Right.
Yes.
The next-
Yes, we recognize that offer, especially because firstly, we do not want a situation where these increases are caused by the fact that we're seeing more embedded generation coming into the market, and this would appear as if it is sort of a deterrence or to discourage the embedded generators from sort of entering the market and be able to participate in the market, especially in certain areas. I see that there's quite a huge percentage. I don't know whether it is an indicative of increased penetration of embedded generators in East London, for instance, as well as Port Elizabeth. The percentages are very high there. I don't know whether that is an indication of the embedded generation increase in those specific areas. And therefore, what does that translate to? Does it then mean that for those that need that power and clean energy and so forth, will have to then pay a higher electricity cost in those specific regions simply because there's more of these generators entering the market? Is that the sort of the accurate way of translating this? I think that is also important. Hence, I'm saying, in as much as you say, yes, the rebate is there, but other means of incentivizing others to then reduce, and also in terms of the consumption itself, how do you encourage that there be consumption in those localized areas such that it doesn't extend to others? And then also, secondly, is there an opportunity of upgrading the system in terms of the network so that then there's no hindrance in terms of the market that is still unfolding and expanding? If that can be clarified, Mr. Mkhize.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the response. From my side, I would just request that in your further augmentation of your responses by way of a written submission to NERSA, may you please also be very kind of also strong, if I can use that word, on talking to the future. Having some kind of foresight, because I think these are the studies. This is what we have now, but with the changing market landscape, how best would this issue of losses need to be attended to and incorporated as you have proposed here? This is the snapshot picture of now, and I would like to see going forward how best to do that. So if in your response, if you can just incorporate that aspect, because it will touch on several other subordinate questions that one would pose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Mr. Mashio?
Thank you, Chair. So I would like to first comment on the comment made with regards to the question asked with regards to the geographic areas that have been identified to be increasing losses. And I think the question was phrased and asked that, are we expecting those generators in those geographic areas to now pay a higher cost for their use of the network? Chair, Eskom would like to clarify that it's not a high cost, but it's the true cost. It's the cost of utilizing the network. So in our submission, we are trying to make our charges cost reflective to those generators with regards to how they utilize and their impact on on the network. Right. Chair, it's also important to note that Eskom is not asking for a tariff increase. We are not changing our rates. All we are merely doing, Chair, is applying or updating how we apply the losses charge. So this is already a charge within our tariff structure. So it's the losses charge is already in our schedule of standard prices, right? It's the application thereof, right? Do we charge positively, if I can use the term, or do we rebate depending on how the various generators impact the network? Okay.
Can you conclude on the part of the consumers? You are saying that you simply want to reflect the cost imposed by those generators in those areas, right? So if then the consumers, how are consumers going to be impacted by that cost? Obviously, the cost is going to increase, so the cost is going to be higher than it is at the moment. So how that then translates to how much consumers are going to pay?
All right. So, Chair, any over recovery, so the losses charge mechanism will change, and if there's any over recovery on Eskom's part, right, in terms of our revenues that we collect, right, we still have to reach revenue neutrality as required, and any over allocation will be catered for through the RCA process, through the RCA mechanism. So in terms of and how that works is if we have an increase in revenue from a certain sector or group of customers in this sense being the generators, then there should be a similar update or change on the other customer base such that we reach revenue neutrality. Okay, so this charge that we are amending, this losses charge, okay, it is specific to generators, not the consuming customers. So the consuming customers, so meaning the load, are not impacted or are not affected by the submission that we've submitted. Right? It is specific to those generators on that particular tariff that has been mentioned in our submission, Chair.
There were other questions that you have not dealt with regards to competition and those generators, and as we are required to introduce competition in the market and make sure that the market, there's fairness in the market and other players in the market will be able to compete fairly. Remember, I also made an example of perhaps generators that could even be participating in the SAWEM. Say, for instance, they will be having like sort of those that maybe have about 5 megawatts as a threshold and therefore participate in that. And therefore, those generators will be facing high network charges that will increase their sort of fixed cost before one gets to the energy cost that they need to compete for as they are participating in the market. So I'm looking at that and that impact. So hence, I would like you to comment on that, because as NERSA, it is important for us to look at how this is going to pan out in the market and in the ability of NERSA as it approves all of these costs relating to electricity, whether NERSA will be in a position to ensure fair competition in the market and that there will be no cost impediments that will increase the sort of fixed cost for other market participants and therefore cripple their competitive opportunities instead of also just competing on the basis of the energy charges. But then there's a lot of these fixed network charges that they are going to be faced with. Can you comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. So with regards to losses and the market, technical losses are a function of the network. They are a function of the grid, right? With regards to losses, I mean, they are unavoidable. In the transport of electricity, there will be a level of technical losses experienced on the network. What would change would be the quantum of those losses, and in different areas of the grid, will experience different levels of losses, and those losses are represented by the loss factors of each section of the network, right? And with generators, so would have either a positive or a negative impact that on the network, but losses as a property of the grid, they must be recovered whether those generators are participating in the market or whether we are talking about regulated tariffs, right? So technical losses will need to be recovered from customers. So here we're referring to the generator customers that are either participating in the market or are being charged the regulated tariff, and those charges will be embedded, in those tariffs in regulated setting, and they will still have to pay for them in the market. So the market will also factor in the cost of losses for those generators. So in essence, Chair, they are technical losses are unavoidable, and they need to be catered for. I think the other question, Chair, that was asked was with regards to I have just remembered now, Chair. There was mention about the piecemeal approach and whether we are intending to, in future, apply for a tariff. Chair, I think I did highlight previously that this is not an application for a for a tariff or an increase in rates, but purely how we treat for the losses calculation. Right, that's what our submission currently, Chair, is seeking to address. Chair, I'm not sure if I have answered now all your questions, or is there still a question outstanding?
I think you can deal with the others in writing, as you've indicated, that you will supplement the ones on incentives and what else can be considered to try and optimize the utilization of the network by those ones instead of punishing them in this manner. And also the fact that we also have another responsibility. Yes, we can come in from our side and look at other incentives as the regulator is required to do so, particularly a regulator that is now a task to ensure competition and introduce competition in the market. So that we will have to look into what is it that could actually work, and also to make sure that other participants, future participants in the SAWEM are not going to be disadvantaged by high network charges, such that then they are squeezed out of the market. That also should be a concern from the regulator, and especially if that will then stifle investments that we would like to see, stifle the competitiveness that we would like to see at the market when that process starts also in April next year. So that is actually our duty, and this kind of a request, it does have the potential of a market squeeze, as well as sort of impede others in a way to, especially with the bulk of the fixed as well as network charges, because they would not be as competitive as others that are not paying such high fixed cost. So we need to look into how this can be balanced better. That's all that I wanted to indicate here. But you may proceed with the other questions. I think there was an issue that Mr. Mkhize asked.
Thank you, Chair. The other question that I've captured was with regards to non-local authority generators. Chair, our submission impact only directly connected generators that are connected to the Eskom network. So these are the generators on the Genduous urban tariff, and those generators are on the Eskom network, and our submission does not impact the generators that are embedded within municipality networks. So our tariff for that Genduous is specifically for those generators, and therefore, hence why we've made that closing remark at the end of the presentation on our last slide, that our submission does not need to follow the MFMA process, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think the question was asked with regards to the upstream network, since you said that this also might have or does have some impact on the upstream network. Thanks.
Chair, please, may you please repeat that question again?
No, I'm saying that part of the question was in relation to the statement that you made. I think that the fact that this also has an impact on the sort of a transmission network in terms of the use of system charges in the transmission network.
Chair, I think what I mentioned, what I was alluding to, was the question on the benchmarking, and what was asked by a NERSA member with regards to was our study or study results benchmarked in any way, And my response to that was this change that we're seeing with regards to the changing landscape and the change, the impact that these generators are having on losses is also seen on transmission connected generators as well. So it was to highlight that our submission is specific to distribution connected generators, but in totality, looking at the grid, we are also seeing a similar change and a similar pattern at a transmission level as well, Chair.
Thank you so much. You let us know if you are now done so that then we can perhaps conclude your presentation.
Chair, yes, I have concluded on my end, and I would like to thank the regulator members for allowing Eskom to present our submission. And we would like to reconfirm that we will provide answers in written form to those questions that were not responded to within this hearing, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. If you can do so within the next 7 days, we'll appreciate that. And also just the impact of the removal of the rebate, as opposed to looking at other options to ameliorate the impact on the network. What is it that can be done to ameliorate the impact, as opposed to just removing the rebates, or other incentives that could relieve the impact that is being observed by Eskom on its network. I think that is very important that you make a submission on that, as you indicated, and also the impact on customers. That's the second thing, as well as the impact on competition, which is critical, as we are already moving towards that state in terms of the market. And think about also the importance of economic efficiency that needs to be realized, and therefore things that market outcomes that we would not want to see. It's very important that obviously there must not be entry deterrence because of certain network costs that are quite high, and to prevent others from entering and participating in the market. Walter, if you can assist those that have an intention of disrupting as opposed to listening to the hearing. If you can do so, we'll appreciate it. Thank you very much. So those are the categories in terms of competition, impact, investment, also the extent to which this could also stifle investment if others are not able to enter the market because of these other costs that they may disadvantage them if they were to include them into the overall electricity cost as they compete in the market. So all of those things, if they can be taken into consideration. I would like to thank you then, Eskom, again for your time and for providing clarification to the questions that were posed, and we look forward to your supplementary submission on the questions that you could not adequately respond to. Thank you very much for your time. All right, we now go to the next presenter, and we've got Mr. Tommy Diedericks from Renew Consulting.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning, Tommy. I'm unable to see you. Maybe I must go to the next page.
My camera is on, Chair.
Okay. I would want to check if my colleagues are able to see you, because I'm trying to go. Oh, yes, I can see you now. All right, thank you very much. May you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you're going to provide to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. May you please then state your name and your designation in the company that you represent.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Tommy Diedrichs from Renew Consulting, the CEO of Renew Consulting. Let me just share my screen and then let me just press. Can you see my presentation?
Not yet.
Let me, okay, I'm sharing my screen, so let me just share again.
Okay, maybe from my side, I'm not seeing. I see the thumbs up from other members. If you can confirm if you're able to see. Okay. Members of the regulator, if you can confirm that you are able to see the presentation, Flighthead.
Chair, there is a presentation which is saying South African Energy Forum, Reform Forum.
Yeah, and Renew Consulting, yes, that is
Okay.
that is the correct one, yes.
Okay. No, I will then check on convene. I'm not sure why I'm not able to see it from my side, but I will follow it as we already have it uploaded
thanks,
on
Chair.
convene. All right.
Okay.
Please proceed. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so like I said, the founder of Renew Consulting, and I'm also now part of the South African Energy Reform Forum, which I'll get into a bit later. So we're obviously here today for the Eskom losses, but what I would like to do, and I'm glad that the presentation went in the way it did from Eskom, because I sometimes feel like Eskom doesn't have a complete picture, or they have different silos working in different sections, and there's not always a coherent, complete picture. So I wanted to take them from wheeling to the customer. So just again, in brief, the retail tariff plan was, I think, also done in a similar manner. And that impacted, obviously, like I discussed in last week as well, but it discussed it impacted the municipalities and so on. And I'm going to go through a few things, but the reason for this is Eskom is I want to show you a whole picture and then also present what I believe is a solution, or the best solution that I can come up with the time. So when we're looking at losses, I mean, nobody's going to think of generation losses without thinking of, for example, the 108 billion rand owed by municipalities in the country. And that's why I say we can't fix the tariffs in a silo approach, amend a little thing here, amend a little thing there, because I feel that often when we do that, we lose track of the end picture. Anywhere where we've got people putting in electricity into the grid on a generation side, no matter how you do it, at the end of the other end of that scale is a tariff, and at the other end of that scale is somebody paying for it. So I understand that your framework from Eskom is spanning over several decades. There's on the Eskom website, there's a very nice history on the tariffs, and it goes from when Eskom started and it updated and so on. But when you read through it, you understand how Eskom has, over the many decades it has existed, always kept up with changes. But one of the things that I don't think that they've necessarily taken into consideration in all of that time, Eskom was the only generator. Nobody else generated electricity, so they had a monopoly. But at least we had the regulator to make sure that those tariffs are as fair as possible. But the tariff structures, that when you look at it at Eskom and when you do your analysis and when you have a look at your cost, it's difficult to not do it without looking at how it impacts the end user. So I'm going to take Mfuleni as an example for two reasons. One, like I said, to explain before the meter solar, I'm saying solar losses, but let's call it revenue losses. and municipals, that customers that do not have access to wheeling. So I know the customers that we or the tariff or the cost that you're referring to today, the generator losses, has got very little customers and so on. But at the end of the day, again, we need to have a look at it holistically. So in 2019, there was tariffs that was overturned. Eskom, ELM, I think the current account is at over 9 billion rand. Eskom actually has an agency agreement with ELM at the moment. But there I want to say I was involved in the Eskom meetings, and I represent most of the, if not almost all the large consumers in Mfuleni. And we tried to approach Eskom, and this is another reason for today. We could see that they don't really understand. And they had a look at legal loopholes, saying yes, in 2019 the tariff was overturned, but then this, then that. But they didn't have a look at the real impact of the customers. And I'm going to give an example. This is the Eskom Night Save tariff. This is an Mfuleni commercial tariff. This is actual approved tariffs by NAFSA for the current year. And I want to show you the impact that this has on the exact same consumer in Mfuleni. So here you go. This is all excluding VAT. But if you were an Eskom customer, direct Eskom, you had access to wheeling, you've got access to all of the other advantages that being an Eskom customer has, you would pay 2.3 million rand. If you pay the same or buy the same electricity in Mfuleni, it's 3.5 million rand. It's 1.2 million rand more. The impact of that is the cost per kilowatt hour for an Eskom customer is 383, but for an ELM customer, it's 5.96 rand. And again, I want you to have a look at that cost per kVA, 639 rand per kVA. One of the reasons I use this is this customer is some of the worst affected, because understanding losses on electricity, the higher the fixed portion of it is. Customers don't have, unless they've got batteries or generators installed, they don't have control over their kVA. They've got control over kilowatt hours, and solar has a positive impact on kilowatt hours. But this customer has got very little options, so just putting in solar is not going to work. So again, I've just shown you that, but what I want you to know is the cost of solar, just solar. And if you look at many of the large scale behind the meter deals for the very big consumers, it's sitting at under 1 rand a kilowatt hour on just solar on PPAs. Battery solutions is a bit different. We're looking at around about 2.50 rand to 3.50 rand kilowatt hours. Each case is different, so it depends on the consumption patterns, their demand needs, and so on and so forth, the time of use and the tariff structures and so on. But in average, if a tariff is around about 3.50 rand, there's a return on investment to be made on even installing batteries. So I want to take you back to, imagine if 3.50 rand is a break-even point to add batteries, and you're paying 5.96 rand per kilowatt hour. What impact that has on the consumer. So the higher price of energy for the end user, the more likely Eskom loses them as a customer, because now that customer is saying, I don't have another option other than to go off grid or to close business, kind of thing. So either way, if the business closed because of too high energy cost, that customer is lost by Eskom indirectly. If that customer puts behind the meter renewables and battery, that customer is lost to Eskom to a great extent. But we cannot look at the cost of energy, and grid stability cannot be looked at from just one side. So we also need, I think Chair, I think one of you guys said that, is that we cannot deter investment. So we can't also be on the other side and say, look, we need to stop renewables, we need to stop this. So we can't deter investment because it's uncomfortable for a municipality or for Eskom. What we really need to work with this. So again, my suggestion, my this is the best myself and other people that I work with now could come up with. These documents are longer, and I try to make them as manageable for PowerPoint, but we would eventually share with the regulator and Eskom if they wanted us to. But it's what we call the National Energy Equity and Sustainable Framework. It addresses the electricity cost disparities, municipal financial distress, and even regulatory implementation in the energy sector. So that is why we started the South African Energy Reform Forum. It's really, like I say, we need Eskom and NASHA and the municipalities to work. I think there's this idyllic idea of this gung-ho way of everybody doing their own thing, but I don't think the general South African person would want that. I think if you give the general South African public access to cheaper electricity and not having to do their own renewables, not having to do their own batteries and plans and so on, but they have access to reliable, cheap energy, I think they're going to go for it. And I think that will be a much more sustainable long-term thing for Eskom as well as the municipalities. In this reform forum, we need access to affordable electricity for low-income households. There was promises made to indigent communities, and I know we've got FBE, free basic energy, but we need to look at the poorest of the poor. Saying that, we can't prioritize them at the cost of losing jobs. So it's not a simple solution. There isn't a 1, 2, 3 solution for this, but they need to be looked at. But the best way to look at them is to look at creating jobs, because the more people have jobs, the more they can pay for energy, and the more we can get these people to as members of, instead of paying for them or having things that drags the entire tariff up or so on. We can make creating jobs just better for the entire economy. Standardized tariff for business and residential customers. So we encourage renewable energy while maintaining grid viability. So I'm really aware of Eskom's dilemma here in how do we incorporate from monopoly, from Eskom being the only generator, to Eskom being one of the suppliers without risking the grid stability and so on. We need to have a look at the importance of balancing cost and accessibility. And the consequences of inactions. So this isn't a 10-year thing that we can look at in the very far future. We are very far in the debt spiral, and there are so many customers that have already left the grid, and we can't continue to do that because the remainder of the electricity will increase more and more. So again, the future of energy in South Africa hinges on the competitive pricing, accountability, and innovative solutions. Renewable energy is no longer a distant concept, but a reality. So we can't wish it away. It's here. But if we fail to adapt, then again, Eskom risk losing customers, they diminish their revenue, and the trust also erodes in the energy system. Renewables are here, and we need to discuss this in detail, not just in a silo approach, but what is the real impact and real cost. So how do we incorporate renewables without costing jobs due to unaffordable energy cost? So again, under the NESF, we have to discuss the current energy challenges. Again, the tariff discrepancies, the municipal financial distress. These are all elephants in the room that we have to address. We can't just ignore them or have a bit of a public participation, but the reality is customers are leaving Eskom at an alarming rate. So we need to have a look at non-paying customers. There, I just want to give Eskom props. I was I was in Garankuwa a while ago, which is probably one of the most difficult areas that you can be in the country with regards to energy theft and so on and so forth. And I had a look how hard Eskom works towards this. So I can see that there is things being done, and I think it is a step in the absolute right direction, because non-paying customers is really hurting Eskom, and I include non-paying customers as municipalities as well. Fragmented regulation. This is not a stab at Nasha. I think this is just a thing of all of us catching up with incorporating renewables, incorporating competition, incorporating Eskom, and all of this historical charges into a way that we can get a regulation on top of all of this. And then exit culture, we need to really have a look at stopping customers from just leaving the grid. Again, I'm a very, very big supporter of a uniform national tariff structure. Eskom, you had a look now at municipal customers paying R5.96, and the same customer would pay you R3, almost just under R4. But I think somewhere in the middle, by giving the same access to all customers and having a uniform tariff structure, I think there is availability for Eskom to balance out the market and to have access to revenue. Because if we look at not just Eskom's tariffs and the municipal tariffs separately, but we look at all tariffs and incorporating renewables, I think there is space to look at the viability of Eskom long term. However, this is going to need the introduction of transitional equalization grants from Treasury to phase in uniform tariffs. I understand that municipalities are reliant on that income, and we can't just rip the carpet out under them. There's real people working for municipalities, and nobody should lose a job. If the municipalities and Eskom and everybody close, I know that there's this mentality of, let them fail. If you fail, we fail. That's as simple as that. So I understand there needs to be grants and help from national government. So again, enact the Municipal Energy Recovery and Stabilization Act. It's just to help the municipalities and to make sure that there's that bridge when we do this, that there's structured debt settlements, independent audits, that the municipalities can have a uniform way of approaching their energy, but the way they do business as well. A unified energy governance code. So in other words, again, looking at the entire grid and wheeling protocols, we are all dealing with what exactly, exactly what Eskom is dealing here with is wheeled electricity to some customers and others that doesn't have it, and who puts up what solar where and so on. We can't ignore it. We need to, we want investment in renewables, but we can't do it blindfolded and just hope for the best and hope that eventually it will work out. We need baseload reliability. Again, nuclear and coal is a big thing there. I showed this last week, but rooftop solar in the country is already surpassed 6,000 megawatt, and as of 6 November 2025, according to NASA's own website and what was published on their website, there's currently over 16,000 megawatts in generation facilities registered. That is a lot. I mean, if we think in terms of what Eskom said, in the middle of the day, if there is 14,000 megawatts of renewables or 20,000 megawatts of renewables available in the day, it has an impact on the remainder of the cost of the energy. Again, nuclear energy, Kuiper over the long term had the cheapest energy over long term. I remember listening to a radio station where the political party in the 1980s, when Kuiberg opened, was so opposed to Kuiberg, and how can you pay that rate for electricity? And understanding that it was like implementing a plan now saying we're going to pay 8 Rand a kilowatt hour, or 10 Rand a kilowatt hour. If we build this nuclear plant, it's going to cost us 10 Rand per kilowatt hour. But 10 Rand a kilowatt hour for 60 years, it's a different sum. 10 Rand a kilowatt hour over 60 years. 10 Rand in 60 years from now on is going to be cents. So again, the long-term viability, our coal plants, renewables are great, but we cannot. We have so much coal and coal plants. Yes, we can run them cleaner. We have to do that, but we can't just ignore them and shut them down. And again, I say here, renewables do not have inertia. What a lot of people don't understand is when the sun shines, it's great for renewable energy. But if you want to start an arc furnace, or if you want the aluminium smelters to be able to use energy, the grid needs inertia. So a lot of consumers don't understand this, and you don't build inertia with renewables. And in actual fact, renewables has, because they don't have inertia in the grid lines, they actually cause a problem, because if there's a big cloud or so on, the coal and the other plants need to ramp up, and this is not always simple. So we need to have a look at it holistically. So again, the reduction of revenue, we need to deploy smart metering, to incorporate how renewables work, to make sure that there's no losses on payment. I think it's time to update the Electricity Regulation Act and make sure that, one, non-payment's criminalized, but at the same time, update it for the scenario that we are in now, not the scenario we were in the early 2000s. And we need targeted subsidies. So yeah, this cross-subsidized that I know that we spoke about is a sensitive topic, but we need to have a look at what can be done. Again, I spoke about the transition fund, just on how it works and so on, so I'm not going to go into details. Intergovernmental Energy Reform Committee. So what we hear, and I just want to stop there. It's sad if I see a government agency saying another government agency didn't do something, because I think all of us are trying our best. I can see the guys from Eskom, I can see the guys from NASA and so on. I mean, I'm at the hearings. I see the amount of work. It's not just pitch up and hope for more money. It's real work that goes into it. But I think an intergovernmental committee where the communication between the 2 or 3 or 4 different departments can go a long way. An actual independent tariff commission reporting to NASA, and annual public reporting. So I know public participation is a big thing, so that we can have public reporting and participation in this. So in conclusion, I want to submit this policy and its procedures. I think we have an amazing country, and we've got so many great things going on. And for so many years, the municipalities and Eskom were the only people selling electricity. But it's no longer the case. And we need to make sure that we look at all parties and everybody putting in energy into the grid so that we don't lose customers. But at the same time, that we look at the cost of energy. What can we do to reduce it and not, just even stabilize our energy cost over the next 10 years? And not have increases will go a long way. We've got access to 16,000 megawatts of renewable energy. That can really help to reduce the cost of energy, but it doesn't help if it only helps a few. And we need equal access to all parties involved. Again, I have suggested this tariff. This is the same slide that I've been showing for so many things, but I think a single tariff will go a long way in this. So yeah, that is it from from my side. I think if we can get to that, I think it will go a very long way. And I do think that there is a possibility for us to really to work together. Because again, if Eskom fails, we fail. If the municipalities fail, we fail. But yeah, that is my presentation, and I hope it helped, or that I could put some a holistic view as I could possibly do for the members, for the public, for Nash and Eskom. Yeah, thank you very much, guys.
Very much, Mr. Diederik, for your presentation. Let me check if the members of the regulator have questions of clarity to ask. By show of hands, members, if you do. Okay, maybe I can just start from my side. Eskom has indicated that this is not necessarily, a tariff-related matter, but it is just the issue of the reflection of the cost that are imposed by those that are causing the mismatch in the production, and also extending to other areas that were never designed for those load demands. What is your take on that? Is this something that must be dealt with outside of the tariff process if NERSA were to allow that certain cost to be approved or allowed for Eskom? Do you believe that this is something that must be done outside of a tariff application process? If so, how do we then know how much sort of the tariff is going to be and what the impact is going to be? If you can kindly assist us with that. That's the first question. If you can take it down, I would like to allow Mr. Mkhize to come in. Mr. Mkhize.
Thanks, Chairperson, and thanks to Mr. Diederik for the presentation. I'm a bit confused with the approach here, which seems to be talking to the high-level issues of overseeing this transition and the tariff setting methodologies. You are coming up with a National Energy Equity and Sustainability Reform Forum with a host of other structures that are in place there. Haven't you considered engaging the existing structures instead of forming yet another structure, making things even more sometimes complicated? And I note also that the issue that you are talking to actually relate to also policy formulation, as to how far have you engaged with the policy making department in this regard. So I'm having the challenge, and your issue of the issue at hand as such, I didn't get how you think should be addressed, whether these figures that have been put forth in terms of the losses valid or not, or reasonable or not, because I'm struggling here. You talk of saying we must not amend piecemeal, but my understanding is that if you've got a system, you can still look at a system, but every system has got subsystems. If we go to systems thinking, you would appreciate that, and therefore, there's nothing wrong. In as far as I'm concerned, there could be nothing wrong with a situation where one looks at a subsystem, but whilst keeping the eye on the whole system. So as moving away altogether in terms of looking at the issue of the losses, I don't think that it's a question of approach, which can end up being the same, whether you're going the way of, whether it's you want to work from top bottom or bottom up, So I'm a bit concerned and kind of uneasy in terms of that's disregarding what has been put forward. So I just like to really get to understand in terms of what has been presented, because one can look at this in building up of the whole issue of even the tariff itself, or you can go system, subsystem, or you can go subsystem to the system. So this is where I am with regard to your presentation in general. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mkhize. You may respond, Mr. Diedere.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Okay, firstly, Mr. Mkhize, just I have no desire in just another forum or so on, but I also can't ignore the fact that there has been engagement, there has been showing up and saying the same things over and over, but at the same time being on the other end when Asha isn't, looking at what rate the customers leave Eskom. And I understand what you're saying. How does this, it's great to have a look at the overview and so on, but how does this directly relate to the losses and having a look at these losses? And I think that is an answer on the first question. Losses has a policy, or if you want to incur losses, the only way to do it is to amend something. If you're saying it is not a tariff, okay, that's fine, but it still impacts. Somebody must pay for something that eventually will impact down the line. So it always goes back to a tariff. Somebody's going to, whether it's part of a later approval process where they say, look, as discussed, we want to recoup the losses made in this way that we discussed. It ends up in a tariff, and that tariff ends up at the public, and it's looked at in isolation. So I don't have a desire, and I'm, like I said last week as well, I'm really happy if Eskom or Nasha says, look, let's work together. I've got it's not a desire to start something else and so on. If I really could do what I wanted to do, I would work full-time on working this. I do, however, have access to some of the largest energy consumers and consult for so many of these guys, and I can see their frustration as well, that if we eventually end up in the court. So eventually there's a tariff that we don't agree with, and it goes to court. And a big part of, in this same documents that I have, a big part of what I want to do is exactly this, is stay out. I don't want to start another thing, but in the absence of a clear and coherent working together, going forward, putting something on the table, there is no other alternative. And I think the customers feel that same way. And that's why I showed Mfuleni as an example, where Eskom is now coming and Nasha is aware of what's going on. I'm sitting in those meetings in the business chambers with Eskom and with the municipality, and I can see the total lack of cohesion, and I can see the impact that it has on customers, and eventually customers closing down. And as a South African, it's just more job losses that I don't want, that nobody of us wants. So I know there might be confusion, and if I didn't present it coherently enough, then my apologies. But the reason why I want to do it is because I don't see it as a separate thing. I see this losses eventually ending up in a tariff, and this tariff ending up at a customer. And because there's not a uniform structure, those customers go away. Eskom is losing, the municipalities are the municipalities are losing. And at the end of the day, if we go too far down the utility debt spiral, there's no coming back. Then it's too late to start a forum or to start anything, because by the time we're done talking, the damage is already done. So yeah, that is, I think, the best way I can answer that. And I think from the bottom up, top down, or so on, again, holistic. My idea is that I don't have all the answers. Yes, I've got some customers. Yes, I've got consulting. I see some problems, and I think I've got a very good overview from my work in the utility sector. But I do think that working together is better, not top up, bottom down. It needs to be looked at from all angles, and we can't just continue to have a look at individual things and not have a look at where we end up. And where we end up is with customers paying more. So yeah, I think that's the best way I can answer that. I hope that answered both questions that was asked.
Thank you very much, Mr. Diederik. We appreciate your time. We also appreciate your views. I think you did touch on many important things regarding also impact on investment, competition, and the issue of this the piecemeal and also the issue of the revenue, which is also very important. And Eskom itself has indicated that if they're over recovering, because at the end of the day, it boils down to the revenue that they recover out of this. So if they then over recover, they've also indicated that that could also be corrected through the regulatory clearing account, the RCA. So yes, it is these are important things. Hence I also put the question to you, that is this the way to go, or is it something that must be considered through a sort of if NERSA were to allow this cost, are these costs that must be considered through a tariff application process, so that everybody participates and we can also be able to see what impact this is going to have. I mean, there's still a lot of work that still needs to be done, even from the fact that we want to understand what the impact of this is going to be on investment, on competition, on consumers. So the regulator must be able to get all of the relevant facts before we get to the decision. So we do appreciate your points, and you have touched on some of those things. We appreciate your presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. All right, we're now going to take a presentation from NOAH Group Trading Pty Ltd. We've got the name of Shirley Salvodi.
Good morning, Chair. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see you. Thank you very much. May you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you're going to provide to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. May you please then state your full name as well as your designation of, at NOAH Group Trading.
My name is Shirley Salvoldi. I am a consultant to NOAH Group Trading.
All right, thank you very much. You may start with your presentation.
Okay, let me share my screen. I will put it on screen mode. I'll just turn my camera off. Chair, can you see my screen?
From my side, I'm not able to, but I will rely on my colleagues so that they confirm. I will also look at your presentation on convene. Members, are you able to see the presentation?
Yes, Madam Chair, I think, yeah, it's perfectly fine now. From my
All
side.
right. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Members have confirmed that they are able to see the presentation. Thank you. You may start, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and to yourself, the Energy Regulator members, NERSA staff, and members of the public. Just to start, we'd like to acknowledge the work that was done by Eskom, and that there is a need for a change. There's no argument about that. At the same time, our response to the consultation paper is to highlight to NERSA where we see risks, gaps, and unintended consequences. And we're going to outline a few of these today and some recommendations for for further work and consultation. So this is not a critique for the need for the change, but rather to identify the gaps and the challenges. So in summary, it's recognized that a review of the charges for generators is needed. There are concerns that have been raised with the Eskom Gen Duos tariff proposal, and it is requested that any decision on generator tariffs be deferred until full transparency in terms of consultation and also cost of supply alignment. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on why we're saying this. So Eskom touched on how the Gen Duos tariff works. It's a tariff that has the following formula. And Chair, I do believe this is a tariff change, because the tariff is a function of a number of aspects, this Gen Duos tariff. There's a network charge, there's a negative loss factor, as Eskom explained, using a formula based on the wholesale tariff per time of use period, multiplied by a distribution loss factor and a transmission loss factor -1. That is the formula on which the current rebate is applied. It's a negative. So this network charge is rebated by this above loss factor. And like I said, the loss factor is differentiated per time of use, and it's not beyond extinction, which means if the rebate is higher than the network charge, it just goes to zero. Then there's an ancillary service charge and an administration charge. So the one aspect of this tariff, the Gen Duos tariff, is being changed. So I do believe this is a tariff change that is being proposed because it impacts the charge that is actually payable by a generator at the end of the day. So what Eskom is proposing is a change to these, the Gen Duos tariff loss factors. I do also want to mention that this also impacts the Megaflex Gen tariff as well, which is not mentioned in the Eskom submission. And removing this losses rebate for the embedded generators has created a little bit of confusion because the submission is actually not clear in what exactly is being proposed. What is this formula being replaced by? It appears to be a move from negative loss factors to positive loss factors per zone, even though there is some zones that are going to have negative loss factors. And there's no mention on how the transmission loss factors, if in my previous slide, you would have seen that the transmission loss factors are also part of this rebate formula. So it's not clear if these loss factors include transmission loss factors, and what transmission loss factors are they also going to now also be positive. And remember, the transmission loss factors are also very old loss factors, like the methodology that is currently used for Gen Duos. And therefore, it should really be a holistic approach that is dealing with both transmission and distribution loss factors. And this was based on a technical study that was done by Eskom, but only on the loss factors, not on any other aspects of these tariff charges. Now, the most important thing here is this is going to significantly increase the tariffs for private generators. And it is going to bring in additional revenue for Eskom, which Eskom has already mentioned. So there's going to be a 1.26 billion Rand additional revenue. And because we view this as a structural change to the Gen Duos tariff, this is not and structural changes are also meant to be done on a revenue neutral basis. So if one charge increases, like it's been done with the losses charge, and remember this is a losses charge based on loss factors, then other charges should have been reduced. So it is not a revenue neutral exercise. It is going to bring in additional revenue. The other important thing about this most of these generators are currently the generators that are part of REAP. And for REAP, this becomes a pass-through cost. The use of system charges for generators is a pass-through cost to the NTCSA. And the NTCSA then refunds the generators what they have been raised as a charge to Eskom distribution. And then the NTCSA needs to increase the energy charges, because this gets passed through in the energy charge or the legacy charge to all customers. So this does have an impact on all customers. And it's not clear how the NTCSA, with their increased bill, is actually going to be recovering this increased bill that will be raised by all the generators that are connected to REAP. So even though this it will be impacting private generators, and there's not that many currently connected. In future, yes, more and more are coming, but the majority that we're dealing with here are actually REAP connected generators, and this will be a pass-through to the NTCSA. So what is the impact on distribution connected generators? One of the big concerns is Eskom did not provide any consultation on what they were proposing. The first time this was seen was when it came out as the NERSA consultation paper. They provided no models in order to assess the impact on the customers. And it also, the submission is rather unclear on exactly what is being proposed. So it's not just NOAA that had concerns on what was being proposed. So there had to be interpretation of what is being proposed. So let's just look at the table on the right-hand side. If you're looking at, for example, a typical solar plant, they would pay a use of system charge for generators, and this has all been just converted to cents per kilowatt hour. Not all these charges are cents per kilowatt hour. They would have raised a 7 cents a kilowatt hour on the use of system charges. There would have been a losses charge, a negative of 10 cents. And the resultant total use of system charge plus losses would be 0. So there would be, and then there'd be ancillary service charges and service and admin. So this current solar plant would have been paying 0.38 cents. Yes, very low amount. This is what they would currently be paying. If we did an analysis where we zeroed all the distribution loss factors, just zeroed them, this would increase the charge by 41% to about 7 cents. And if we had interpreted what Eskom was proposing in their submission, would increase the use of system charge to 9 cents. And for wind, it ends up being a 62% increase. Now, this is a cost that ultimately gets passed to customers, either through REAP, through the REAP process, or to the customers that are buying wheeled energy. So it significantly erodes the very thin margins that generators are currently operating in for the private generators. For REAP, it's a pass-through. So these are material changes where there has been no consultation, no models provided. So, and it doesn't appear to be in any way for generators to be able to mitigate these changes through engagements and so on. So this is seriously going to affect investor confidence in South Africa and renewable energy deployment. Again, reiterating, we're not arguing that Eskom is not entitled to make these changes, but there needs to be proper processes involved in suggesting these. And to hint that this is actually not a tariff change is disingenuous. It's a tariff change. So there's a number of gaps that have been identified. Firstly, it's not revenue neutral. So yes, it can be dealt with through the RCA process, but it still means an increase to one sector of the customers that is going to have to be dealt with. The transmission losses are part of this GEOS negative loss factor formula, but it appears to be excluded in the analysis. So, and maybe there's been a bit of misinterpretation, but it's not clear. It's not clear what this formula is actually going to be. It's because it's not provided. Also, static annual loss factors with no time of day seasonal variation, even though it is linked to the time of use tariffs. The data sets, the inputs and the modeling wasn't really published. I think there was comments made by regulator members on peer review. So there was no peer review that affected parties were able to interrogate. Also, this is fundamentally because it's a tariff change. It should have been accompanied by a full cost of supply study that should have included the network charges for generators, maybe even the service and admin charges. It should have been a holistic submission dealing with all the aspects of this and requiring a cost of supply study. Can't just be argued because it's a change to loss factors, it's not a tariff change. It is. And then these formulas provided for the loss factors per zone, which I've already mentioned. So we identified a number of key issues. One was on the procedural side. Eskom didn't consult with any of the affected parties. And no assessment was given on the impact on generators or customers at the end of the day where this becomes a pass-through cost. The principle, Eskom is not reducing the network charges or customer losses charges when you are doing a structural change. So there's no evidence of revenue neutrality. The content and the accuracy, there's, as I've mentioned, the recommendations are not totally clear. So it's possible there might be some misinterpretation. It's not based on a cost of supply study. Just one sector of this, a losses analysis. The impact on end customers, as stated, these charges are going to be passed on to the NTCSA as part of the REAP costs and onto customers through the legacy charges. So it does end up having a tariff impact. And it is not clear how the NTCSA will be able to recover these costs, as these costs have not been included in the MYPD decision for the NTCSA. The methodology we feel is incomplete and has not been independently verified. So more clarity is required. There's lack of formulas for the tariff application per zone, and the transmission loss factors appear to not be considered. On that as well, we do understand that transmission will, the NTCSA, will be coming also to the regulator to make changes to the charges on loss factors and maybe even network charges for generators. And we feel maybe there needs to be cohesion between whatever the NTCSA is going to be presenting and what distribution will be presenting as well as part of the submission. So in conclusion, NOAA supports the transparency and Eskom's initiative to move towards cost reflectivity, but the proposal in its current form can't be supported because of all the gaps and the issues identified. So NERSA should defer approval pending appropriate consultation and further resubmission addressing the issues raised. Thank you, Chair. That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Salvodi, for your presentation and for the issues that you have raised and the proposals that you are making to the regulator in order to thoroughly consider this. Let me check if the members have any questions of clarity. Let me start off with the the issue of I think some of the issues you clarified them very well, but maybe if I can just get to the issue of the NTCSA, do you believe that because we did not have NTCSA presenting here so that we can hear its views regarding how the proposed change will affect will affect the RIP generation charges and the legacy charges associated with that. Do you believe that it will be crucial for NERSA at least to hear, the impact of this proposal and hear what are the views of NTCSA as to how the proposal will affect the cost there? That's the first question. If you can just clarify that for us. When you talk about the fact that there are no models, what do you mean by that? When you say that there are no models or no model that has been submitted by Eskom on the proposals that Eskom is making. The third thing that I just want to understand is the specific impact this change would have on NOAA as a trader or any other traders, just as a matter of principle for the introduction of these losses. If I can get your view on that. Yeah, I think those are the questions that I just want to understand from your side. Thank you very much. Any questions from the members? You may respond then, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously I can't talk on behalf of the NTCSA, but knowing that this is a pass-through cost under under REAP, and it becomes part of the NTCSA RPP procurement costs, I think it probably will do no harm to ask the NTCSA, but I can't talk on behalf of them. On the model, so in previous, like with Eskom, when they did the retail tariff plan, which was obviously a structural change for all the tariffs, they actually provided models to customers to go and put input data in. And you could put your data in and you would actually see the impact with this is what you're currently paying. This is actually now what you're going to be paying with the structural changes. That's the kind of model I was referring to, because what happened in the submission, it was open to interpretation in terms of what Eskom is actually proposing. So in that table that I showed where, the increase from 0.38 to like 10 cents a kilowatt hour, this was based on an interpretation of what Eskom is proposing. So there should have been a model saying, okay, if you're a generator and you're located at this GPS position, this is now what your loss factor is actually going to be. This is what you're going to, and this is what your charge would be, so that people would be able to make informed comments on what exactly Eskom is proposing. So that's the model. So yes, in terms of the specific impact on NOAA, Chair, we could provide that to you in writing on our interpretation of all of the projects. But I do know that this will have an impact definitely on the private generators, on their customers, because depending on how the PPA is structured, this becomes a pass-through to their customers. It has a big impact on the viability of projects, which were based on specific assumptions around loss factors. So yes, but Chair, we could respond to you in writing on that specific point for NOAA. yeah, it's not just for, you know, for NOAA, it's also from a trading perspective, but NOAA also owns generators. So it would be a cost for the generators specifically, which now gets passed down the line to the customers. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. We look forward to that submission from your side in the next 7 days. If you can kindly submit that to us. But thank you very much for your time. This is the last presenter for the day. I would like to thank you for your time and also thank other presenters that have come forward. Maybe at this point, if I can just allow ESCOM. Thank you very much, Ms. Salvodi. If at this time I would like to give ESCOM 5 minutes. This is not to rehash the presentation, but as an applicant, just to reply on some of the issues raised by other presenters and the concerns that were raised. Over to you, Mr. Mashiko.
Thank you, Chair. Chair would first like to thank the other presenters, the stakeholders, for their presentation and bringing through their points, and we would take that into heart and into consideration. Chair, as you've mentioned, we would not be, rehashing the presentation that we've already went through, but we would like to thank the participants, the members of the public for in the hearing for giving us their ear and allowing us to present to them in terms of our submission and hopefully to clarify on some of the facts or matters contained in the submission. As we've already mentioned, we will be providing additional responses in writing to the regulator, and that will be done timeously within the 7-day window period. Thank you very much, Chair. Nothing much further to add.
All right, thank you very much. We have now come to the end of this public hearing. I would like to thank the members of the regulator for assisting and asking questions of clarity, and also just to thank the presenters for availing themselves and to express their views regarding the matter that is before the regulator, so that the regulator can properly assess and make an informed decision. We will keep in touch with in terms of notifying the members of the public and everyone when the energy regulator is ready to take the decision. As we normally publish the meeting, meeting notices and the issues that will be discussed in our meetings. It does appear as indicated by a number of stakeholders that there is more work that still needs to be done, and we will have to also properly consider all the input before we take a decision. With that, I would like to thank everyone and to then bring this public hearing to a close. Thank you for your time, and thank you to the observers as well for showing interest.